globalization is failing, and that's not according to some bloggers or YouTube commentators. But now, actually, as the World Economic Forum is happening at Davos, we can see that major figures from the IMF, the European Commission, central banks, and world leaders are starting to realize and admit that the global economic model, which we have been relying for many decades, is not really working anymore as expected, and the world is not going anymore towards some kind of globalization. It's changing, and it already has changed from it. So this is not a headline. This is somewhat a warning, but also an indicator of new different opportunities. Now that the major economic event that gathers heads of states and bankers and institutions is happening, we see that world leaders and heads of the IMF and the EU are mentioning how globalization has to be rethinked and that the world is becoming increasingly more and more fragmented. We're not going anymore towards integration like before, but there is more countries that have together created chunks, and not each one of them separately or an integrated global world, but more like chunks of countries coming together. And now, as we're seeing that even world leaders have been starting to question this kind of structure of globalization, then it's definitely is time for big investors, entrepreneurs, and people who do business globally to rethink their future and how they will do business in the future and how they will live, where they will live, what kind of citizenships, residencies, business structures they will have, and how to move forward from this. And in case you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm Theodora from The Passport Investor, an international advisory firm that focuses on second citizenship and residency planning, as well as global business solutions. For decades, we have been going towards this globalized world, and there was more integration, there was more of a system that has become more predictable. Governments, countries, institutions, they were coordinating more between. Trade was expanding, capital was moving more free. We see the example of the European Union, which is basically to increase trade and free movement of goods and services between multiple European countries. This is what globalization was all about, and it was not just the EU, but also the rest of the world. We were going more towards an integrated, simplified, one system world that was more simple and easier for doing business. But it looks like this kind of era is ending, and now we are entering a world with multiple power centers. There are competing interests globally, and there is less coordination between governments and economies. So this might seem a little bit chaotic compared to the system and this globalization world that was previously more present. However, it doesn't have to be chaotic, it will just be a bit more complex. So it's time for global entrepreneurs and everybody who is investing globally, living globally, to plan and to adjust for these kind of complexities that will arise more and more in the future. The world now can be described as being more multipolar. Instead of one global system, we now have several parallel systems running at the same time, which means different regions, different rules, different tax approaches, different attitudes towards capital. While this sounds more complex, it can actually be turned into leverage for global-minded individuals and those who can strategically approach such a new multipolar world. On the bright side, when countries are competing, they are also making sure to provide value in order to attract high-value individuals and capital and talent into their own country. So we can see this through attractive or competitive tax regimes, numerous residency programs for investors. Then also the example of territorial tax systems. We know that Paraguay and Panama are some of the top popular choices and known for its attractive territorial tax system. Then numerous citizenship pathways. We saw that also last year, that numerous CBI programs have arisen in Africa. We'll see the new surprises in 2026 for new citizenship pathways potentially. And when countries are also competing with each other, they create more business-friendly regimes. So I would say after this globalization era, we are going towards new opportunities era, precisely because all these countries will be competing with each other and trying to create benefits in order to attract investors, capital, talent. Like the best examples of such countries would be the UAE, which is continuing to attract capital and talented people, and it has really become a hub for business and innovation. There's also Singapore offering numerous benefits to high net worth individuals. And there are also Latin America, Southeast Asia, and also Africa, which are more and more trying to position themselves the same way as being attractive opportunities for high value individuals. For governments nowadays, it's not just about managing their population, but it's also a competition for attracting capital and talent. When we say that globalization is dead, it sounds like the world is collapsing. However, it is reorganizing itself. And we see regional ecosystems are emerging. The Gulf has definitely positioned itself as a tax and capital hub. Then we have Southeast Asia, which is a growing entrepreneurial zone. Then we also have Latin America, which is offering flexibility and territorial tax systems. All kinds of alternative financial infrastructures are emerging across the BRICS and regional blocks. And we see that different regions have been becoming more and more attractive, while I see still that the world is like one. However, I also see that people who have businesses in multiple areas of the world are adjusting to different chunks of countries, different regions in different ways, and making use of these opportunities. There is not anymore one country that can be said like this is the best country, but combinations of countries and jurisdictions. And the strategic benefit is in those combinations. Now, for high-level individuals and investors, the risk is not in the market volatility, but having a high concentration risk in terms of their citizenship, their tax exposure, banking, the jurisdiction they're in, how their corporations are structured. Because when policies change, and they are changing, we saw that quite frequently, people who have no options tend to act under pressure and potentially do the wrong move instead of the right one. However, those who are able to plan in advance and, let's say, structure early and diversify early enough to be able to survive these sudden regulation changes, they can make the most out of this multipolar world. And it might not happen that something bad will happen tomorrow, but it can happen in the foreseeable future. You don't know the exact timing, but when it happens, you can be ready. And if you are more risk exposed in one country or one block, let's call it like that, and you have also different structures in place in other areas of the world, then you might not suffer so much under these sudden changes. So definitely a new world is emerging and new possibilities. The complexity also comes with new opportunities, so it's time to plan in advance and to adjust the structure towards a new multipolar world. So it's time to diversify internationally, and not in order to escape, but in order to have a proper architecture, which includes having multiple residencies across regions, international business structures, banking across different stable financial centers, a second citizenship over time, but a citizenship that helps you diversify, and a structure that gives you geographic flexibility for your family, for your business operations, long-term goals, investment. Putting these structures in place is not about using every single option, but it is about having the opportunity of having these multiple options. That is the asset. The optionality is probably the most powerful and overlooked form of wealth. Feeling free, having multiple options in different regions, the diversification. In this kind of world now that has multiple power centers and multiple financial centers and different ecosystems, having a presence and something in place across these multiple chunks of systems is the new opportunity long-term and is the new asset and wealth. Having something in place across these multiple systems is the new asset and way towards wealth preservation and new future investment. What we're witnessing right now is not the end of the world order, but the end of complacency. So the idea of having one passport, one system, and one country that will always work in your favor is absolutely not anymore guaranteed. But the new thing that is happening is that there is more awareness of different jurisdictions, of different business structures and setups, and that mobility can be planned strategically. And for those individuals who are able to plan slowly, strategically, and make the right moves, this can be a huge advantage, whereas those who fail to plan at the right time, they might have to make some changes under pressure and make the wrong decisions. If you're interested in knowing how global-minded individuals, international entrepreneurs, investors are structuring their assets and businesses across multiple countries, how they plan their mobility and increase their passport portfolio and position themselves across multiple jurisdictions, then you're in the right place. This is precisely what is being and will be further discussed on the Passport Investor channel. And in case you're interested in services relating to this, we can definitely help you out and guide you further. Feel free to contact us. The information will be below this video, and make sure to look at other videos which we have on this channel that also discuss different jurisdictions and business setups.